So welcome everybody to the telco track. So I don't have this in any of my slides, but my qualifications for opening the telco track is I work for Verizon. So a few of you may have heard of that company. I actually am one of the product managers for a networking product that works with cloud services. I heard in the operations discussion and the enterprise discussion, there was a little bit of talk about networking. Well, you know, clouds don't work really well without networking. Ask Amazon about the cloud that they stood up in Boardman, Oregon. They have a serious problem, which is that none of the telcos go to that location. And why do I know that? Because they came to us and asked to drop some very large pipes there, and we had to turn them down. So anyway, so I'm going to be talking about how to scale OpenStack for telco scales. And it's not just telcos, it's financial services companies. CERN, of course, was the original very large scale user of OpenStack, and of course eBay and everything. But telcos have some interesting and unique challenges that is not just about scale. So I'm going to talk about that. This is also based on a book that I wrote with Stephen Gordon, among others, on the OpenStack architecture. So it's the OpenStack Architecture Design Guide, which was written about a year ago. I actually think it's holding up pretty well in terms of it's really a development of the different use cases and for building OpenStack architectures. So I want to talk a little bit about what goes into a design guide and how that and I'm going to then relate it to the design guidelines that telcos need to work around. So design guide is really a methodology for developing an architecture and use cases. So you really have business requirements flowing into technology, and then in the telco world, you also need the operational piece. That's the piece that I think, as you just heard in the last panel, is probably still missing in the OpenStack community. And I think that's partially derived from the fact that the OpenStack community is very heavily weighted toward developers who tend not to think about operational issues. But of course, telcos, when we develop new products and new services to get rolled out, the first thing we have to do is think about, well, how is this thing going to scale? How is this thing going to be supported by our operations people? Oh, and by the way, can we support it for 20 years? Because we have products that have been, I'll tell you, I know there's fewer and fewer people with telephones, but you know what? That's a product that's been around for 100 years. And sadly, some of the services that support it are, 40 and 50 years old. So that's one of the key things you have to think about, long-term supportability. So when you think about design guides, what is it? So it's not directions for building your cloud. There's lots of them out there. In the discussion this morning around distros, and I know there was a whole lot of, a couple years ago, Rackspace and cloud scaling, published design guidelines on hardware. They sort of didn't really go very far, so I think that's kind of gone away. So it's not a hardware specification. Clouds are supposed to be hardware agnostic, of course. And it's not directions on how to run your cloud. But what it is really understanding what's driving you to build the cloud so that you can actually come up with the proper specification. So you do need to think about business objectives, technology constraints, and as I said, with the telco world, organizational and operational requirements are really paramount. So this is just a complexity diagram. Again, I went out and looked for the most complex diagram, but this is OpenStack. I took this out of the documentation. So OpenStack's complex. But you know what? Telcos are complex. This is probably one of the simpler diagrams of some of the operations, some of the systems we're using to run our services today. So if you think about, your cell phone is great, right? It's a nice little box. You push the little button, you put in those numbers, and, magically connects to your friends across the world. Well, there's a whole lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes to make that happen. Working for a telco, I see it every day. So the customer, it's seamless. It's all, it's those ducks, but we're busy paddling like crazy underneath. So here's another view. But of course, pretty pictures are not enough to design an OpenStack solution. I know we talked a little bit, there was mention of DEFCORE. I think this is actually a really important concept, which is that we've really moved away from that onion model, that the original OpenStack idea. This was stolen from Rob Hirschfeld, these diagrams. I've been involved in the OpenStack community for about 4.5 years now. And, the idea was Nova and Swift, were the core. There was a couple other things. And everything was around that. And then there was, the concept that there would be, startups and developers and companies and ecosystem. Well, 5 years in, that's not the reality. The reality is that it's really components that really need to fit together. And some of them fit together pretty well, and some of them don't. So pulling up back toward, what you do when you're thinking about the design of any kind of OpenStack, and this doesn't only apply to telcos, you really have to think about the users, the end users, the operators, technical considerations. Telcos are frequently pushing the envelope on the boxes, right? So we're running at massive scale, right? Verizon has 140 million customers, at which magically get billed more or less correctly every month. And we track every single phone call. Yes, and we do share them with the NSA too. It's not our choice. Those operational issues to make sure that all those 140 million customers get their bills and they are more or less correct is pretty important, because that is the model that we have. That's what makes us the money. And all of these considerations have to go into that architecture. And then I have some examples of some of the different architectures. I will not, these slides presumably will be published, so please do not feel that you have to just read them. But this is kind of a high-level view of some of the business objectives. Now, this is a pretty generic, so I want to move over into the telco-specific requirements. So, as I mentioned earlier, mission-critical systems, right? 140 million people are depending upon these systems working. We don't talk about 5 nines, we talk about 6 nines. I was involved in an upgrade of our core routers, which of course are pretty key. It took us 2 years to do the design and planning and implementation. The actual implementation and cutover took 2 seconds. But what that meant is the network for those 140 million people was not taken down during the process. So that's pretty important. And it takes a long time. It's, I know, DevOps and flexibility and, time to market is big buzzwords, and OpenStack in the development community and the startups. Telcos can't work on those kinds of timeframes. And that can be frustrating to us. It's frustrating to me. I'm the product manager for one of the, for Secure Cloud Interconnect. It's probably the first product that's kind of new in the sense that it's really developed out of non-existing technology that the company's done in 10 years. And you know what? We are, it's rolled out and it's great, we're selling it, but we're running into the usual startup kinds of issues. And the company's struggling with that because we're not used to dealing with, oh, wait, there's a bug in the code. We didn't think of that. Yeah, we have to fix it. And so far, I'm comfortable coming from I spent 10 years in the startup community, so I'm pretty comfortable that we're on track. But there's a lot of people that are above me who are not comfortable with products that have not been so well tested before we went out to market. So we also have complex requirements. I just recently got trained on the dispatch system, the trucks that roll out to fix the cell towers, and if you have a problem with your FiOS, whatever, you have to call and somebody comes out in a truck. Well, there's this whole system behind the scenes to dispatch them. It's called Coffee Dispatch. We're great at the acronyms, and that system is about 35 years old. Complete with a chart that says what these acronyms mean, which you have to memorize. So I was trained on this system, and I came back, I'm like, oh my God, we got to be able to do this better. So it's very difficult to get rid of legacy systems. So we tend to integrate them into our newer systems. So we had these sort of layers. And we have thousands of applications in our portfolio. So integrating OpenStack into this can be a big challenge. And as I mentioned earlier, reliability and uptime. We are the internet, right? You expect it to be up nowadays. I support our official SLA for our private networks with our private network customers is 5 nines. We actually deliver 6 nines. 6 nines is 2.5 minutes of downtime a year. And we take that pretty seriously. And that includes something that the OpenStack community is probably not even aware of, but network latency, performance. These are all things that, if that cloud is located in Hillsboro, Oregon, and you are located in London, you will know that there is latency. And you will know that there are performance problems crossing those 12,000 miles. And people don't think about that when they design these cloud architectures. Another thing that's really important to think about, and I know, OpenStack is relatively new, right? It's 5 years old. In telco time, that's a blink of an eye. We really have to think in terms of long-term timeframes. As I mentioned, that coffee dispatch program is 35 years old. We're still using a screen scraper. And it's in purple too, with the black screen and the purple letters. I'll tell you. And our products also are decades. It's not uncommon for, that cell phone here, cell technology is 15, 20 years old, right? So that technology that got rolled out 15, 20 years ago, still there. So supportability on long time frames is something to consider. I do a lot of work with small startups in the company, sort of talking to them, and frequently what I have to say is, you have great technology, you're a 10-person company. We cannot actually deal with you. Because even the process of working with our legal, I had a conversation with a startup where, I sent them over the NDA and I said, sign it, and then we'll have the conversation. And the CEO of the company came back to me and he says, well, we want to change the NDA. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what? That just ain't going to happen. If you want to have a conversation with us, you're going to sign the Verizon NDA. And that's the end of the conversation. Guess what? He did sign it. And he was worried that we would steal his stuff. And I had a conversation. I said to him, listen, if we wanted to steal your stuff, we would have already done it. You wouldn't even exist. But we can't. We need you. But you just have to deal with who we are, which is legal's important. We have regulatory requirements that we have to go by, and we have to support systems for decades. And we have to be, we have to dot our I. We get fined if we've been fined, and our competitors have been fined for sharing personal, customer information inappropriately. So, our legal department takes this pretty seriously, and the company takes it pretty seriously. I get trained on it. Every 6 months I have to take the little PII training. So supportability is something that, OpenStack is struggling with today, and it's important for us, for telcos to really uptake, be able to intake OpenStack and put it into full production. That has to be a critical component. And that's part of the reason why the telcos, for the most part, are still playing with OpenStack. I know there's some that are putting it, Comcast has put it in production, but it's in the back systems, and it's a very specific area. It's the content management area. Verizon is definitely looking at it. We're definitely planning on rolling it out. It's not in production today. And again, our timeframes are not uncommon to take 2 or 3 years before we're rolled out into production. I had a conversation with a guy from Amazon yesterday, and he said the typical customer takes about a year from going, playing with cloud, doing that first POC out to production. So, that's not an uncommon time frame for enterprise. To expand it out to the telcos, which are even longer time frame, 2 or 3 years, is not unreasonable. Operations, I have conversations with operations all the time because, again, just to get a product out the door, we have to prove that operations is already in place. We have to prove that if the customer calls the help desk, that somebody on the help desk will know what to do. In fact, actually, the product that I just rolled out, we skipped that step. That was a bad thing to do. Because we actually tested it with the operations people. One of my coworkers called up the help desk with a pretend ticket to see if it would be handled. The help desk person hung up on him because she said that he violated PII and he couldn't be, his credentials couldn't be validated. We knew we had a problem. So there's a lot of time spent on working through the operational issues and making sure all those procedures work. So business considerations. So if you think about the telco, it's what I call the rent roll. We're in the rent roll business, i.e. the majority of our services, we don't sell it once, we sell it monthly, right? I know we're getting away from, cell phone contracts, the 2-year contracts, but, month to month, it's still a monthly. Most people are not going to get rid of their cell phones. They're just going to pay it monthly instead of being on a contract. So it's still basically a incremental business where we expect that revenue to come to us every month. And as I said, we have very, very long business cycles. And also I've mentioned the complex business, not only are the systems complex, but we have complex lines of business. I work on the enterprise side of the company, and I work with a lot of the salespeople, and most of them have, maybe they know a couple of the lines that they're supporting, but they don't know all of them. And they don't know all the details because they can't, because we have literally hundreds of products, and all those products are customizable. So I know Verizon recently rolled out a campaign for cell phones. We said we're down to 4, simple, right? 4 cell phone plans, right? That sounds simple. And then you read the details like, oh, well, then there's a little asterisk, right? So we can't, and again, it's not just Verizon. all the cell phone companies, all the telecoms have this problem. And it's very important. Everybody uses it, right? We have, probably, there's 7 billion people on the planet. Probably 5 billion of them have some kind of contact with telcos today. Pretty scary. Another complexity is we have a mix of target markets, right? So we have the 140 million consumers. We also have the top, the top enterprises, right? The Fortune 500s pretty much guarantee we're in 100% of the Fortune 500s. And we're, of course, government. So we're in everything because everybody's dependent upon us. We also are global. That brings up some interesting requirements for standing up clouds and OpenStack. Because you run into issues of geodiversity or, like, for example, Germany has some requirements that certain data cannot leave the borders. That's true for Canada as well. You have to think about that when you're designing your OpenStack architecture. That means you have to stand up separate OpenStack environments in Canada and Germany. And you have to be able to have a mechanism so that the data from those companies has to stay, that specific data. So medical data, for example, in Canada, of the employees cannot leave Canada. So just another consideration that you have to think about. Means you need to think about multiple sites and the interconnectivity between them. Although a side effect of it, that we're very large companies, is we do have the means and the willingness to spend money. So we will sink, $100 million into a project if we think that there's some value in it. And a lot of times it's not just a new product. A lot of times these projects are put in for reduction of operational costs. So, driving efficiency is important. So that is one of the reasons we're looking pretty seriously at OpenStack, because we're looking at it to drive efficiency for the company. We don't really want the 5,000 applications because probably 3,000 of them are duplicates of each other that have kind of gotten layered up over time. So, we want to rationalize our portfolio and make it more logical. And, of course, Verizon, like many other large telcos, is a conglomerate of other companies, so we've been bought and sold. I have interesting conversations with our cloud partners about our IP addresses, because we own a lot of IP addresses, which we manage. Well, we've never bothered changing the names of the original owners. So we have, MCI, we have Verizon Wireless LLC, we have, UMSnet, or, a whole bunch of other things. And, as I like to explain to the Amazon guy, you have to give all your networking guys a history lesson in the in the telco industry. Just something you have to think about, right? It's not something most OpenStack people really think, but it's actually important. And we also have an appetite for large capital expenditures. Again, because we do operate in a global scale, and we also operate in that long term. So we really have the capacity and appetite to put a decade into development of a product. It's kind of a luxury, isn't it? Not everybody can do that. Just throw in a complexity slide. Yeah, that's kind of more like what our systems look like. They're interconnected, blah blah blah. We literally have 3 SAP systems all in parallel, and they're in different revs. And it's random which group you're in. I've been at the company for 2.5 years. I've literally moved 3 times between 3 different SAP systems for no particular reason other than, I just happened to be organizationally moved to another group. So obviously that's something we would want to fix. So some technology things that we think about. So interoperability is really important to us. The telcos traditionally have worked with sort of the set of telco providers. So Ericsson and Cisco are the companies you typically see. We spend millions of dollars with these companies. Alcatel-Lucent is another one. And why is it? And it's partially because we need to be comfortable with the company the vendors that we're doing business with, that they understand our challenges and understand that we are building for the long term, and that they will support us for the long term. So, that 10-person company that we're having a conversation with, we have no idea if they'll even be there in 2 years, right? We can't rely on a company that size. That's part of the reason why we tend to work with these larger companies. There was actually a case I heard of where there was a company, we were very interested in their technology, and we basically brokered a sale to one of our regular vendors just so we could do business with them. So, technology obsolescence is not an option for us, right? Decades. And that's something that I know the OpenStack community is really struggling with right now. I do know that Mercado Libre, I believe, is still on Cactus. They were very early adopters. Great use case. They're stuck. And we have the same thing. We have a lot of systems that we're stuck on. So that's something that OpenStack really needs to address to, supportability in the long term. Microsoft is struggling with this, yes? Sure.
So from the OpenStack community's perspective, it operates very much the same as Linux. Linux doesn't do long-term either. And that's where the value of the vendors come in, because the vendors
Yep.
fill that role.
Well, and we spend a lot of money with Red Hat.
Right. And that's why.
And that is exactly why.
So I'm not sure that the community is I don't know a model where the community does a long-term support.
But somebody has to. And right now, there isn't really.
Because, so I guess my question is why, right? When the vendors fill that role, why is there need for the community to do that?
Well, Linux, first of all, Linux has been around for 25 years now. And, Red Hat made it kosher for the enterprise. But it also took a long time. OpenStack is only 5 years old. And Linux wasn't really accepted into now it's common in the enterprise, but I wouldn't say it was common until maybe 10 years ago. So it's really, again, timeframes. I'm actually amazed at how fast we're adopting it. I mean, Verizon right now is in the test dev mode. But normally, looking at some of the other systems, we wouldn't even have considered it until another couple years. But also, the supportability of older versions is something that OpenStack's really not doing very well at all about. And that's something that we do. Ericsson, we pay Ericsson big bucks to support 10-year-old boxes and 10-year-old software, or 15 or 20-year-old software. SAP does a pretty good job at that too as well. And of course, extreme reliability and high availability requirements. I mentioned the 2-second turnover. So that's we're willing to throw hardware at it, but I think one of the values to OpenStack is the ability to not have to throw hardware at it and to do it in other clever ways. And it's something that I find that the telco community is still kind of getting used to. We're still kind of hardware focused, and I know there's a big push to SDN, but again, we're still kind of letting it shake through. So clouds, of course, need to be highly scalable and elastic. That's kind of a given. This is something that, the next one here, is something that I have seen in spades, because I'm working with the cloud partners, so the Microsoft and Amazon and SAP and some of the other cloud partners. This is a real weakness in the cloud community in general. I think it applies to OpenStack because, of course, Neutron is still struggling. Most cloud providers, and shockingly, Amazon has a big problem with this. but all of them do. They don't really have a good understanding that the networks don't stop at the data center edge. And of course, we understand that greatly, because we run the rest of the network. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where we're talking to the Amazon network engineer, and he's talking about the VPCs and the gateways and all this stuff. And then we say, well, how are you going to cross over to the, to the other data center or to the customer's back-end systems? And literally the person just falls over. He has no idea. Now, in fairness, we have no idea about how applications work. So I've been on enough calls with customers talking about applications, and we're talking about networks. And, and I'm the person who's bridging, well, you need to use the network to get to the applications, and you need to understand that application to make sure that that network works with that application. And that's something that we're not very good at. And so I've been working on a lot of training to bring our engineers up to speed on cloud applications and getting the cloud vendors' engineers up on networking. And that's a gap that I really see in the market. So finally, I think, the telcos really, cloud infrastructure is really important for the telcos, but we're just going to be slow at adopting it. So, operations. So the dirty secret about, telco operations is they're often very siloed. They're very most companies, telco companies are very hierarchical. We're very operationally focused, as I mentioned earlier. We tend toward fast follower cultures. So, it's pretty hard for us to be cutting edge. And again, it's because we have the 140 million users out there. You can't be running a startup culture when you have that many users. And one could argue that, Facebook does it. You know what? Facebook doesn't really do it. Because Facebook is kind of one little narrow thing, right? We're much bigger than that. So some use cases. These are the ones that test dev is kind of the ones we're working at right now. The ones that we're also planning on expanding to: business support systems, billing systems, and really that's pretty standard vanilla OpenStack, right? So you would stand up a cloud. We're virtualizing those systems over in the cloud. Operational back office. That's going to be slow, but we're going to be moving toward that. Content management is actually major. That's what Comcast is doing with it, and I know we're doing some work with that as well. So the flexibility, what's the time? 5 minutes, okay, that's fine. So all of these are use cases that will serve us well, but a lot of them are not in place today. So, and that's because of all those other issues that I mentioned earlier. So here's, so this is actually taken from the design guideline book, which I recommend you all read. So there's a whole bunch of different, I don't want to talk to you. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can slice and dice cloud architectures and OpenStack architecture. And you really have to fit the architecture to your requirements. So, for example, general purpose, that's the vanilla public cloud architecture. That's to really serve sort of a little bit of everything. So that's kind of a balanced system. So Verizon has a public cloud. We sell, it's called Verizon Cloud. And that's actually going to be coming up in OpenStack. Compute focus, that would be, analytics. We would use that for analytics, for logging systems, looking at, we watch the capacity of our network, of course. That's pretty important to us. Storage, that's going to be, the types of workloads we would use there would be content delivery, that's at top, the FiOS, set-top box and that sort of thing. Network focus, that's for SDN. I personally think that's going to be kind of long-term for us because, we have a lot of investment in our current infrastructure, and it's going to take us a long time to convert it. I know there's a lot of work in that direction, but I don't predict that that's going to convert anytime in the near future. My personal read on it is going to be about 2 to 5 years, and we're going to get there. Multi-site's really important. We're a global company. We see that with a lot of our customers, which are also global companies. They want to be able to access things all around the world. They want to be able to do geosegregation. They also our customers are pretty sophisticated about the latency and performance issues. So they want to have the data that they need be located near where the office that's going to be pulling it from. We do a lot of algorithms. We use MPLS on our back-end systems, and MPLS is actually pretty good about doing least cost routing. So that's actually, combining that with clouds, that can be a pretty powerful solution for addressing that. And hybrid cloud, I definitely see that as, again, we have a fair amount of existing systems out there, so, they're not going to go away. They need to be integrated with the new systems. And, of course, massively scalable is pretty important to us because, we do have a lot of customers. So I actually have a bunch of sort of just pictures about this, which go into a little more detail. But given the time, I think what I'm going to do is kind of skip over all this stuff. It's pretty much what I've talked about, so don't worry, you're not missing anything. But sort of get to the highlights, and then I'm going to open it for questions for the last couple of minutes. So the key takeaway for me is that you really have to think about, high availability, supporting those millions of customers so they get a good experience. And some of the other cloud companies have realized that as well. And I can't say Amazon is in that category. And the really planning for the decades of use. It's a different mindset. And it's something that really needs to be thought about. And again, I think OpenStack will get there over time. It just takes time. And I am pretty sure that OpenStack will be the default standard for the telco world in the next 10 years. So, yay, OpenStack. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. So, any thoughts? Or your heads are exploding? Yeah.
So your test environments are running on OpenStack currently.
Yeah.
Is it everything running, including SAP and other applications?
No. We're just doing test dev.
What
Yeah.
is selected there?
Yep. Yes.
So you mentioned you did a lot of business with companies like Telco Operations. Are you talking to those companies about their advanced offerings around OpenStack, such as Cloudland, for instance?
We are, we talk to everybody. But, and again, this is my personal opinion. I don't speak for the company in this regard. I find that most of their, they're always anxious to take our money, right? But there's a disconnect between, where the community and the cutting edge and entrepreneurial companies are and where the Alcatel, Lucent, Juniper, Cisco companies are in terms of technology. So,
And even in those companies, you mentioned Alcatel,
Yeah.
Juniper, they obviously all have, maybe not significant, but some effort
Yeah.
to move from proprietary systems to open systems.
Yeah.
That, do you see that as a good move on their part?
Oh, yeah. Definitely see it's a good move.
And I mean, are they to require? Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing, I guess, from the telco's perspective, right?
Yes, actually, no,
Are you gonna like buy them?
eventually, yeah. So, yes, I think, I didn't really mention it before, but we do have a commitment to open source, which is a change for us. And it took us a while to get there. But yes, we do have a commitment to open source. We do look to that, open source first. But on the other hand, it behooves us, if we're going to be dropping 10 or 20 or 30 or 50 or $100 million on some technology, we need to do our due diligence, and so does our partner. So the partner companies we do business with have to do due diligence as well. I've been looking at an NFV for, probably 2 or 3 years, and it's, in my personal opinion, really immature. I mean, that's not what our vendors are telling us, but when I talk to them, that's what I'm seeing. So, any other? Yeah.
Are you using OpenStack in any bare metal orchestration?
I don't think so. I think we're playing with it at this point, but I don't think we are.
Oh, on that, this concept of Internet of Things, right? You see the whole cloud management platform managing OpenStack or VMware or what have you. Do you also see that perhaps managing other kinds of things down the road and
Yeah.
OpenStack playing in that field?
I do. So Verizon and other companies are betting heavily on Internet of Things. It's an obvious fit. It's millions of devices. We already know how to manage millions of devices, right? We're really good at it. So the Internet of Things is kind of an obvious extension. We've already announced some products. We have a product called Gridwide, which is, all the meters on the side of your house. They don't have to run a truck up and down to gather the information. It's all over the internet now, and we sell that product. Just went live a couple months ago. So that's kind of our first foray. We've also announced some partnerships with, I think, Ford Motor Company for telemetry. Ford or GM, I can't remember which, but so we're doing a lot of work in the automotive space again. So yeah, that's an obvious fit, and yes, the cloud is definitely driving it. I happen to know for a fact that Gridwide is being driven. Its back-end systems are on the cloud. So, yes.
For high availability, do you go for the cheaper commodity lots of hardware, or do you go for the more traditional hardware features?
It depends upon the group. So remember what I said, we're highly siloed. There's 180,000 of us, and we're global. We tend to, one group might do one thing, another group might do something differently. So we have any more questions or? Excellent. So thank you.